the New Age panel. And this is a panel discussion on lessons from the abnormal for the New Age leaders. And let me introduce you to the panelists. The panelists are, the first panelist is Mr. Sanjoy Chatterjee, who is the director of the board and CTO of Ideation Technology Solutions. He's an engineer with experience from Tata Motors and Tata Technologies. And he started his entrepreneurial journey 13 years ago, founding Ideation Technology Solutions, Ideal Analytics Solutions, and startups in the areas of healthcare, genomics called Biogenic, and environment tech called Enviom Research, developing software products and solutions in the areas of analytics and data science, IoT, and enterprise mobility. Mr. Chatterjee is also the chair of NASSCOM Special Interest Group of Analytics. He has received his MTech from IIT Kharagpur. I warmly welcome you, Mr. Sanjoy Chatterjee. The next panelist is Mr. Anmol Singh Narula, who's the Director, JIS Group Educational Initiatives. Mr. Anmol Singh Narula focuses on innovation, technology, and marketing at JIS. He also facilitates investments into early stage startups through the family office. He has graduated from Rollins College, Florida, USA, with a dual degree in international business and philosophy. I warmly welcome you, Mr. Anmol Singh Narula. And our third panelist is Mr. Sachin Thakkar, who is the founder and CEO of AAA Solutions Private Limited, a commerce graduate from St. Xavier's College, Kolkata, and a PGDBA from IBS, Hyderabad. Mr. Thakkar has been instrumental in spearheading the AAA Solutions operations and providing a strategic direction since its inception. Mr. Thakkar has pioneered software solutions for the retirement benefit fund industry in India. Under his leadership, the company has witnessed geographical expansion across major cities in India and also introduced leading edge IT and support solutions for HR department, including payroll and retirement benefit funds, finance and treasury departments of major companies. Prior to his entrepreneurial journey, he had a stint in debt markets with a leading investment banker. He has been an active member of NASSCOM and has been instrumental in bringing together the industry and startup community on a common platform. I warmly welcome you, Mr. Sachin Thakkar. And our chairperson for the session is Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary, who is the Regional Director East, NASSCOM. Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary has more than 2 decades of experience in information technology and related market intelligence. He has worked on a plethora of projects on new product ideas, business planning, go-to-market initiatives, and management development in companies like IDC, TCS, AMI Partners, etc. He is personally enthusiastic about spreading the potential of Eastern India as an IT destination in the country and helping emerging companies to grow in the region. He has done his BTech in Electronics and Instrumentation from Jadavpur University and PGDBA in Information Systems. I warmly welcome you, Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary. Now, before I hand over the session, another reminder to the delegates that there's a Q&A box. In case you have pertinent and relevant questions, kindly put them in the box so that we can attend to them at the end of the session. And I now hand over the session to you, Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary, the panel discussion on lessons from the abnormal for the new age leaders. Over to you, Nirupam.
Thank you so much, Raki. It is really a pleasure. And I was listening to Prasenjit. He was talking about customer experience and how it really matters in these times and how we need to be innovative, right? It's very crucial. You did a wonderful job of introducing the panel. And really happy to see INFOCOM in this format, really. We have been attending INFOCOM for so many years face-to-face. And I think this year, due to this virtual platform, so many guys are logging in from different parts of the world, and they can actually log into the sessions and listen to what all speakers have to say. I think this is exactly the new normal. So we really have passed through some traumatic times in the last 6-7 months, especially in the beginning when the lockdown really started. And it was almost overnight. I mean, you see, we didn't get much time to prepare also. Many of us who actually shifted to work from home kind of environments. So it didn't give us much time, but thanks to agility of some of the companies, especially I talk about IT industry per se, most folks didn't face too much problems. Of course, we stakeholders were there to support, government was there to support. From NASSCOM, we had actively supported and given do's and don'ts, best practices, and assisted admin teams, etc., while they're transitioning. Still, there were a lot of learnings. And I think our panel today is actually lessons from the abnormal for new age leaders. And I really am, it's a pleasure to have such an elite panel with me, with Sanjoy, Anmol and Sachin. Sanjoy comes from a background which is basically he's working a lot on services projects. He works with World Bank, he works with the government sector a lot. Specific to services, he's doing a lot of amazing stuff and also in the analytics. So we'll get a lot of perspectives from him in terms of how he dealt with the situation and what his learnings were. We'll come to those. Anmol specifically is from education line, so we'll hear a lot about how transformation has happened for his industry. Personally, what were some of his learnings, and also how the industry is coping, how the stakeholders, like you're talking about students, faculties, we're talking about parents, how they're coping up with this new normal and how they're approaching. What is the approach? We'll actually listen from Anmol. And of course, Sachin is also from the IT background. He's working on very interesting products and also pension funds, as you heard Raki already told. And he's dealing with products. So we have an interesting mix of services, education sector and products. So we'll get all the perspective and you'll get to hear some amazing stories from each one of my panels. Before I go ahead and actually ask the first question to all three, I'll say at the end of the day, these times, if we go back to simple, drawing board, it is to do with people, process, and technology in these times, and about verticals who are actually, thought ahead of time. And I'm sure there are certain verticals like hospitality or retail or certain kind of services which did really suffer because of obvious reasons in this pandemic time. But there are certain other verticals, like say healthcare sector, and of course IT and I'm not even considering these sectors who actually did much better in this times. And some of the leaders have really shown their mettle and taken some tough decisions, some fast decisions, and being very, very agile when they were dealing with the crisis. So at the end of the day, we all have to deal with our people. I mean, I'm talking about people who in our own companies, as well as you are dealing with our customers, our stakeholders. We have to make sure the processes are proper. If processes are proper, if you're following the best practices, I'm sure things will not go too wrong. And tech is here to support us, right? I mean, all the platform we are using right now today in INFOCOM also, it shows how it is very much possible to interact and be in touch with your right audience in whatever scenario you want, right? So we have about 40 minutes. I will start off with a question to all three. First, I'll go to Sanjoy and then to Sachin and then to Anmol. My first question to all three of you, and you can take maybe 3-4 minutes to address that, not more than that. Sanjoy, to you is, the question is, when in March, when suddenly the pandemic happened and gradually there were transitions and you faced those problems of shifting and taking some very tough decisions also, I'm sure. What has been the experience so far in these months? What were some of the learnings? Because you are a role model for many of the upcoming leaders. Many emerging companies look up to you, and you're also working very closely with startups. So what has been your experience in ideation? Let me start with that.
Thanks. Yeah. So even my experience in this COVID was enormous. I mean, probably one of its kind, because in the March, we had started a very big transformational process, for ideation as a company after 13 years of journey. We were about to finish a merger and, with a very big company in US, Vision A's. So that's, we're just about to complete in the March end. So that was a challenge because of the COVID. And luckily, the experience was, even during the COVID period, we completed that process. So we'll be having some announcement very soon, but that's a good experience because even the scenario in India, in California, I mean, it was like, pretty complex. And despite of that, so additional to the normal COVID situation where you have to take care of your customers, revenue, cash flow, on top of that, there's like a big process of, M&A. So altogether, it was complex, but luckily, we did it very successfully. So that was a unique experience. And the other part of it, like, about our work, the way we used to do work earlier also, mostly everything, all our resources and all our, infrastructure being in, like in cloud. So they were already having that, flexibility of working from any place on earth, and our employees were being distributed that way. So that really didn't affect much from an operational or from the delivery point of view. And the third experience was about the new customer acquisition. Probably in last 2 years, we haven't get that traction. I mean, in these 4 years that we have got, 4 months, sorry. So that's a huge area opportunities that has opened up, which is unbelievable. Probably, as I said, last 2 years we didn't have that much of, in short period, so much of opportunities. So mixed, all positive, and it's like great learning, coping up with the new scenario. And already we have accepted this scenario and doing well.
A follow-up question to that. I'm sure, you know the kind of other problems which are associated when a lot of our employees are actually working from home. You understand the cybersecurity concerns, and when you are logging into secure systems. So how do you deal with that? I understand that you also have this background of, and so what is your suggestion, or what is your mantra to other companies also who are working in similar lines? And of course, we heard of several instances of attacks already happening in some corners. So what was your experience and how you dealt with it?
Well, we had prior experience because we already had people from France, they used to have this kind of infrastructure already in place. And many of our customers being in healthcare in US, so as you know, because of this PHA data and all, so this kind of a security and working from remote, that infrastructure was already placed. Like sometimes you use Citrix or AWS with all those, remote desktop, and even some of the workstations were completely in the cloud. So now what we are doing we have already allowing people to work from home using secure VPN connections. And of course, like the cloud being already our DevOps infrastructure. So that really nowadays very standard, and it is provided by almost all biggies. Be it Microsoft, be it Amazon, be it Google. So any standard can be adopted.
And what has been upskilling? Have you faced some challenges in terms of training and development of employees, the HR challenges, or anything specific related to trade? We have several platforms. Like recently, NASCOM also came up with this Future Skills Prime, where you can easily log into the secure system and you can actually upskill. So, and I'm sure in the line that you are in, and the kind of project that you deal with requires high-end skills, and it requires continuously updating your employees, your workforce in different parameters. So how are you doing that in this time?
Yeah, some area we got some effect, especially for those urban projects in some of the areas in remote locations. For example, in Tanzania, that project got delayed by a few months, but again they have picked up. So that way we had some challenges because all those projects requires a lot of data survey on the ground level through partners. So all those partner companies in multiple countries. So that was a bit difficult to arrange them, mobilize them and all. And also to kind of shift from the way earlier the data used to get collected, shifting to a new way of collecting the data, mostly from using technology and all. So those adoption was a learning, of course. But yes, those were the few challenges primarily we faced in data collection area.
Okay, I'll come back to you for some very interesting examples for how you dealt with different verticals and the customers, but that's later. Let me go over to Sachin now. Sachin, we understand being a product company, it was never easy, right? And being a company, we were interfacing a lot with some of the top concerns in India in the area that you are dealing with. So what has been your experience, if you sum up, maybe in 3-4 minutes, in terms of how has been your journey in these last 6-7 months, and tell us about 3 or 4 takeaways for our audience here, how you coped up with tough scenarios, and maybe some innovations that you did for yourself and the team.
Right. Nirupam, that might take a little longer than 3-4 minutes.
Sure.
If you
Please,
can allow
I think
that.
that would be an interesting story for you.
There were in fact a lot of lessons, tough lessons learned. And the first and foremost lesson, I would say that we should bow down to Mother Nature, pleading guilty of actually plundering and ravaging her to the extent that we have to see this day to day. Okay. While we learn a lot of patience from Mother Nature, we also got a message that if you fool around too much, you will get back in million folds. Not only to this generation, but even our future generations are going to suffer because of that. While we are trying to make a positive out of everything, that's why we have named it app-normal. So we are calling it new normal. Okay. And we'll definitely pick up the positives from there. But if you see, it is definitely abnormal. Wearing masks and social distancing is something which is not normal. Okay. Although we might have to follow it for some time. So what needs to be done is organization-wise, we need to sensitize people on this particular topic. That if we are talking on this subject, why at first place did it happen? Okay. Each individual, and I speak of organization because organization is a part of society. And like in school, they teach students and they sensitize the students on various topics. It is our responsibility as the leaders in the organization to also sensitize people on these topics. Each individual can be ready for some more catastrophe which might be awaiting maybe in a couple of years. Who knows? Okay. So in that scenario, an individual has to think that in this kind of a life, what is important and what is not. That's the first part. Second part, if an individual has to think so, the leaders of the organization too have to think what is important for the organization and what is not. What is the purpose of the organization that they are fulfilling? Okay. Compassionate leaders, authentic leaders will communicate well in this scenario, will communicate deep into the organization, cutting down all the hierarchies. Okay. And maybe accepting their vulnerabilities, that this thing happened. And in fact, as a leader, we also do not have an answer in certain cases. Okay. Lay open their vulnerabilities to their colleagues so that maybe a creative approach or creative strategy can be built up by consolidating ideas, by leveraging collective wisdom of all our colleagues. I think that is one role that a leader needs to play. Third point is only a team can pass through this difficult time. Yes, you heard me right. Only a team can pass through this difficult time. Now, for me, team is actually trust, empathy, adaptation, meaningfulness. I repeat, for me, team is trust, empathy, adaptation, and meaningfulness. Only when you have trust and empathy shared amongst your colleagues, okay, and you give them some kind of meaningful or some purpose for which they are working, you will see they will be quick to adapt to the situation. Imagine the entire organization, if these values are imbibed into the organization, and imagine the entire organization as one individual. You will, the trust will be the legs on which the organization will run or walk. Empathy will be the hands with which they will help others. Adaptation will be the mind of the organization, where they'll be agile enough to adapt. And meaningfulness will be the heart of the organization, where they would know why does that organization exist. Okay. Having said that, I believe teamwork will make the dream work, but it is not the team that we have been talking about, a bundle of people doing projects together, but the team that this is a new acronym for me. Okay. The fourth item is digitization or digital transformation is now a necessity. I am sure you would have heard this joke being circulated in April, March, where there was a quiz. It asked that who led the transformation, digital transformation in your organization? Was it the CEO, was it the CTO, or was it COVID-19? So obviously it was ticked as COVID-19. Okay. Now in fact, in April, March, most of even the largest organizations would have answered COVID-19. Okay. But if today we still have the answer as COVID-19, that would not be a very nice situation to actually see. Okay. So CTOs, the CEOs, and COOs will have to take lead and do this digital transformation primarily on 2 counts. Okay. Another important thing I would like to mention here is that when we talk of stakeholders, there are multiple stakeholders. There are shareholders, there are government agencies, there are employees, and there are customers broadly. But in this situation, the entire focus would be on the employee experience and on the customer experience. Okay, your internal customer as well as, for the time being, shareholders and other government agencies, statutory bodies can take rest. Don't take me otherwise, but I'm saying our immediate focus should be on the employee part and the customer experience. Okay.
Agreed.
Now on the employee part, there are they use a hardware to basically deliver services, and they use some tools. In this remote working environment, they will require the collaboration tools. Now I'll share our example. We had some 5 to 6 different collaboration tools which we were using in the old normal, where, for example, we had Zendesk for ticketing, we had Jira for projects, we have Pipedrive for CRM, we had WebEx for remote support, etc. But in this time, we really felt that these were not sufficing, and we kind of explored few more tools which will at least help us collaborate across the departments and across the organization. We evaluated few vendors and we found Zoho One. Although I am not canvassing for Zoho One, but I am a satisfied customer of Zoho One for the past 6 months. It has helped us to work in this remote environment with much ease, because we have seen the month of April and May, which perhaps we will not be able to forget. And we have also seen the subsequent months from June till date.
So, Sachin, just interrupting, did you start evaluating post-COVID, or you were actually already thinking before COVID to actually do this transformation?
No, it was a post-COVID reaction. It was a post-COVID reaction, because earlier when we were physically present in the office, all these 4 or 5 tools were also sufficing. But in remote environment, it was becoming a drag. That is where we explored this and we found it extremely helpful.
Excellent.
Not only for internal, even supporting our clients outside, there are 2-3 business apps in Zoho One which can help us support, or we are in fact regularly supporting them. Even the projects that we do, we can share some screens of Zoho projects with our clients so that they are able to see the real-time situation or the status of the project. Having said that, the other part was the hardware part. Now we had 50% CPUs. We were not perhaps I would say as lucky as or as prepared as Sanjoy was, where most of the things were in place. Maybe with some variations they could adjust. We had 50% CPUs, 50% laptops, and it was not possible to pass on the CPUs to individual employees' space. Hence, we explored some cloud facilities, and then we shortlisted AWS after a couple of months of struggle. Again, to tell you, we're quite happy with AWS. There is a flexibility in terms of work and time, and in terms of scalability. Onboarding today is not a challenge. We can onboard anybody in a couple of hours' time. We don't have to worry on the licenses front. We don't have to worry on the hardware procurement terms, where when 3 or 4 people were supposed to join, we had to bother all that. It was quite a task. Now, all that has become quite easy today. The next level, which we have not yet attained, is cloud telephony, which perhaps should happen in the next couple of months. The last important point in this digital transformation, we were wondering that while we have a physical virus now, and the entire now world is moving towards cloud, what happens if we have a virtual coronavirus now? Okay, we will again be back to not the old normal, but maybe the old normal. Okay, so what we have done, we have retained some of the physical assets as well. We keep it on for some time, and so that in case of any such emergency, we can, with a short notice, fall back on these items. I mean, our old assets. So that was broadly our experience with.
I think you raised some very, very important points, Sachin, in terms of reflecting on some of the best, when you were talking about process, how you really took the challenge head on and took some fast decisions. Further to that, the empathy factor, the people factor came in quite strongly, and you were dealing with obviously the pension funds, and you know it very well how it's so important.
Correct.
We got some important insights from you in terms of usage of cloud, and of course you're using secure cloud, very in simple terms.
Yes. To
make sure. And also you spoke about while unlocking and while going, you have to be ready to go back to earlier scenario. Of course, we'll never go back to pre-COVID scenario. I'm almost, we're almost all sure, right?
Yes.
Things will never be the same again, perhaps.
Correct.
Most big organizations have totally almost decided, many of the organizations, I don't want to name here, have decided that will go for the hybrid mode. Like many people will be permanently working from home, and some people will be going to office, of course, for hurdles, etc. But we have to get ready for that new normal. Right. So we got some very interesting insights from you. We'll come back to you for your customer specific cases.
Yes.
But let me go across to Anmol right now. So Anmol, it's you are in a sector which really touches all of us, all of our lives. Like we talk about education sector, and being in Kolkata, being one of the premier institutes, premier universities here. It is definitely a lot of expectations from a university like you. When suddenly this particular pandemic struck, and we were struggling in our home, like for example in my home, my daughter is in one room doing online classes, my wife is in another room doing lectures. It didn't happen overnight, right? We got ready for that. Even schools had to get ready for upgrading their processes. It was never easy. Faculties had to get trained on PPTs and how to project screen and stuff. So it took some time, I'm sure. And also from education institution point of view, there are certain processes I'm sure you needed to automate, etc. So tell us your journey. I mean, last 6 months, some key learnings from your side, and also some advice for peer institutes, peer universities, and the sector per se. And over to you.
For us, like we were actually in January, we started talking about the pandemic, because when we saw what was happening, we were like, this might actually cause some disruptions at some point, but we never really even considered how serious it would become. And even despite having it at the back of our heads, it was still a surprise when the lockdown happened. So like disruption was like the biggest issue. Disruption to education was like our big point, that we didn't even want to waste one day, right? And so for years we had been planning a learning management software where we could kind of go with an online offline approach. But COVID, like as Sachin said, it was the catalyst for us to really bring that system in. But with technology, there's a lot of issues like adoption, timing, and once you take a system on, it takes really long to just have everyone use it that way. So for us, it was important that we didn't like jump and get an outside system immediately. So we went with a decentralized approach for implementation for the technology. So because we have 30 institutes, right? So it would have been very hard to shoehorn a complete software for them. And it's not like IT, where most of my peers here, they're in the IT sector. So people are more receptive, right? So academic, you have way more stakeholders. You've got, professors, and you've got students. So we let them, pick their own softwares. They all the institutions have their options. They picked up Zoom, they picked up, Google Classroom, and they also use WhatsApp along with it. So it was very like rudimentary, but like any crisis, like it brings out the best in people. And then we started doing these meetings on Saturdays, which we never used to do as a whole group, right? We had institution heads, HODs, really communicating with each other what best practices were for their schools, what was working, what were the loopholes, how were students trying to, get past it. And we were taking that feedback because we were, like I said, we were planning to make our own learning management software for a while. So we took all of those learnings and we started, building our own system, which is finally ready. Right before that, also, we had just taken admission completely online. So it has been a challenge, but honestly, it's been good because we've been able to get so much feedback that at any other time, the implementation would have taken more than a year, I think. And in like 3-4 months, we've had people onto our system. So we went from like admission going completely online to classes going online to like building the software for alumni as well. So now we've got everyone on one system. We started just implementing it because again, like I said, we've got like 30 different units. Sorry, yeah,
Again,
go ahead,
interrupting.
Nirupam.
So for you, it was the decision of automation was pre-COVID, not post-COVID. It was pre-COVID. You
It was
decided.
it was on the books. It was being built. But the thing
Okay.
is, every day, different things would come up because it just always got pushed back a little bit. We'd make a little bit of progress, and then it never really happened. So yes, it was pre-COVID, but in COVID, we really like amped up the implementation for sure. So it's been an interesting experience, but other than like what we were going to do, the new idea that came during COVID was we had a lot of students that were coming up with these like great innovations. So we started making sanitizer at a pharmaceutical school, right? They were making sanitizer when there was a shortage and distributing it amongst them. One of the students team, they came up with a glove that was self-sanitizing. So we had a lot of innovation that was coming up.
Very interesting.
So within a month's time, actually, props to our tech team and the internal team, they came up with a system called Ideometer, which was our like fundraising platform. So students could put their projects on it, and they could ask for specific amount of funds, and they could fundraise from within GIS. So either the college, the department, or even like friends and family. So that brought within, I think, 2 weeks, we had 200 project submissions from across our group with these fantastic ideas that students had. So that was just great to see. Like it would really flip your mind. Like innovation in India doesn't just happen in IITs. It happens everywhere. And so it was just really fantastic to see how the crisis brought out the better in all of us.
Fantastic. And we'll come back to you for some more
Yeah.
specific cases related to your experience with
For sure.
external stakeholders. Sanjoy, let me come back to you. Very crucial area. You have been dealing with government sector. You have been dealing with multiple clients across the globe. You're dealing with Indian clients, domestic clients, and you're also managing your other processes. And there are 2-3 portfolios that you manage, which I personally know. Why don't you tell us about customer? What has the journey from the customer front? Tell us some cases where you saw some amazing, innovations. How you manage those projects, and also what are some of the learnings that others can follow? I mean, when you are dealing with typical government, private sector, other stakeholders, and entities like World Bank, etc. What has been the experience? You spend about 3-4 minutes on this.
Sure. So the first instant, reaction when this lockdown started was like, how to find how to make our existing customers happy and find new opportunities. And of course, COVID being new for everyone, so we started looking up what could be the areas based on our core expertise we can slightly tweak and help this COVID scenario, and maybe some value addition to our existing customers or new avenues. So they are the first thing that we did because we already was doing urban projects a lot, and we had partnership with a lot of universities. We had a brainstorming session with few universities. And then we started an initiative within Berkeley, UC Berkeley, called spm.berkeley.edu, which is a smart pandemic management team of Berkeley. This group was formed, and I being the initial founding member of the group, along with a lot of Berkeley professors and people from different industry, those were mainly ex-Berkeley as well, though I'm not. This small group was formed, and our brainstorming sessions were in and around our collective experience and what solutions and platform can be tested during the COVID. So interestingly, this group is pretty active, and that led us to a lot of business. In fact, and that's we are still continuing, and this will be continued. So the few platforms that immediately came out of this was the first one was for the safe building. So it was a facility operation platform. So it's basically we designed, all these are analytics driven, of course. So it was basically, we designed a platform to monitor and mitigate the exposures like in enterprise facilities and minimize the likelihood of disease outbreaks. So the data from HVAC, like, air conditioning, the airflow of the building model, and so those were all taken care of. So that's being the one of the initiatives. The second initiative we took in the transportation area, because we targeted a lot of other areas also. So transport being one of our core expertise area, we designed a platform called Cloud Management Platform. In fact, you will be happy to know, like, the same platform now we are using in Kolkata Metro, which is e-pass, and the same will be now being used by Kolkata Port Trust. So that's in the transportation vertical. There was a few more, like one was very interesting. We made a social behavior platform using a nationwide smartphone data. So we got tied up with Google there from USB. So there we got a lot of mobile data, the GIS data, of course anonymous, and then we understood the complete flow pattern of the people, the population behavior to capture, and then the heterogeneity, and from there we used to take decision like how the COVID is spreading and what are the how we can stop. So those were the analysis being done. Of course, there were a few others, like digital contact tracing was there, which was using a lot of gamification. The idea was how to make a campus safe as well. So for the students, in order to reopen these campuses, it was very difficult. Now it is reopened, and there are small measures like how do you do the contact tracing using Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and combined technologies, but making them fun for them. So we had very small technology interventions like shake together. Like whenever the students are there in a cafeteria, say 5 students are there in a meeting, so they would pick up their phone and shake it. So now all the data gets captured in the immediately. So there were small interventions. So through SPM, this is one of the initiatives that we had taken. And the second bigger one was again though in US. So a coalition was formed, qcoalition.org. It's basically a coordinated advocacy coalition. There were a lot of providers like Northwell, CVS, Data Driven Health, and a lot of big companies. So and we did a kind of a data-driven analysis for the whole US. We captured not only COVID, but also flu data, their hospitalization data, even pollution data, all sorts of around 200 data sets from multiple sources. So the idea is how to stop flu if it comes again. So it's like a preparedness for that. Coalition.org is already public. You can see now it's available for public. The third one in the government area, I would like to say, we have started even during this COVID period, a great initiative by West Bengal government, a program called Digital Outreach and Citizen Engagement Unit.
Excellent.
So that's an initiative that the West Bengal government had taken during COVID. The idea was how to reach the citizen and disseminate information. That was a very important during the COVID, because not everything is not physical. So how you really disseminate? So more emphasis on social media was, the need was, and rather in general, the internet was, this need was realized, and then we created the ecosystem platform for information dissemination in few of the departments, including the recent Duare Sarkar. This is also is a part of that. Like in health bulletin that you see, how to give this information to the people from different sources, be it through Facebook, be it through Twitter, be it through web, and like that. So this is a great one where the government is actively promoting all the schemes that the government they have. The citizens can know this in no time, of course, and then the government can take their whatever, like what we call in technology term like social listening. So what people are saying about these, what changes need to be done so that the government can take policy changes. So those are the things. So these are the primary 3 areas that I wanted to share. Yeah.
Very interesting, Sanjoy. And how do you find, very interesting to know about government initiatives and how they adopted fast and how they actually leveraged companies like that of yours, and I'm sure many others, for listening to citizens to basically make processes which would enable, that don't stop, right? It's very important. And so it's a very interesting experience that we had.
Yes. So a process, the benefit goes to, of course, like, government has got some very mini government, because their machineries are more or less, perfect, if you can really use it well. So this was the example. The willingness was from the top to bottom, and then the information flow both the ways, like from the government to the people and the people to the government. So this process was very well established, and this is kind of we started with the health, then panchayat and a few other departments, of course, which were initially food and all, PDS, which was pretty much important during the COVID scenario.
Right.
Other departments like
very important. Yeah, great. Let me go over to Sachin right now. Sachin, tell us your experience with customers in these times. Tell us some of the concerns that product companies would have faced. I'm sure I heard from some of the other leaders also, and how they have coped with it, and some ways as to how you dealt with it and how you talk to other customers.
Right.
In different parts of India, and how we're collaborating, how we are reaching other leaders, how you are planning ahead. Here are some of the customer cases from you.
Okay. Before I come to that, just a couple of points I would like to mention here. We're doing work from home, and actually it's a boon. Okay, just that we need to maintain the right work-life balance, which unfortunately has not happened in our Indian culture. Maybe we need to learn from our Western counterpart of some kind of dignified work hours for our entire staff. This I expect the society, the industry to also take it up in various forums, because work from home, while it is a win-win for the employee, for the employee's family, for the organization, and for the nature, it will not be so if people have to work at odd hours. And that has been our experience.
Absolutely.
And when you mentioned clients, I have been talking to some clients also, requesting them not to call after, say, 7:30 or 8. Maybe politely, not that we don't take calls.
You have the luxury to do that. You're doing well, I'm sure.
Yes. But we need to look at this if work from home has to be a bombastic success.
Right.
Second, most important thing, which I missed at the earlier part, is that the scope of recruiting people from small towns, villages, is now enormous. Yeah. We don't need to recruit people from the larger cities or large campuses here. Okay, that is a fantastic opportunity. I would say the real benefit of IT is now coming, where across India, people will have the scope of sitting in their home and being with their parents, and yet delivering to some of the larger corporates of the globe. Okay. Now coming to your question of our experience with our clients, yes, as Sanjoy said, we were glad. We're lucky enough to have good number of orders since May, June onwards. Okay. Since we deal in applications for retirement trust funds, the Provident Fund, Superannuation Fund, and Treasury funds, which involves a lot of employees. So corporates with say 2,000 or 3,000 above employees, they were looking forward to make this Provident Fund and Superannuation Fund available online, which was not, the digitization there is slightly poor, which was an opportunity for us. So a lot of people have come back to us because we make this paperless application for loan by the employees, application for settlement by the employees, be they anywhere in India or in the world. So that has definitely helped us, this particular product of ours. And one success story that I would like to share, one large media corporate house placed an order sometime in February. Okay, gave us their data by sometime end of March, and we were at the peak of that COVID-19 crisis. In the month of April and May, we completed the entire migration for around 14,000, plus there was some dormant around 28,000 employees sitting here in Kolkata. Okay, with people working across. So that was, even in normal times, I bet it wouldn't have happened that way. I'm very open to accept that.
In this that was recruiting also, like you have recruited.
Yes, we have recruited people from
districts of Bengal and other places also.
Yes, we have done it not from Bengal right now, but from Shillong, from Noida, from Mumbai. We are looking at people from Hyderabad. So now we even earlier when we used to recruit, we used to think that no, he's going to come from 30 kilometers away from Kolkata, whether to recruit him or not. But now the entire world is open for recruitment. That is something which is phenomenal.
Absolutely agree with you. We don't have much time. Let me go across to Anmol right now. Anmol, you understood my thought process. I wanted to know from you, like when you were actually collaborating with other stakeholders, or when you were actually launching new plans, what has you already mentioned the fast agility. I mean agility which your unit has shown in terms of automating processes, and I'm sure you started a lot of processes which generally would not see in normal times, online processes and reaching out to your students across different colleges, etc. What has been your experience dealing with entities, dealing with and reaching out to students even in remote corners, and many students are actually working not even in our state, right? They are in different other states, like Bihar or Odisha or Jharkhand, other places, or Northeast, other places also. What has been the experience so far? And I'm sure you will tell experience from your faculties and other people also.
Right. Right. Honestly, what really, I'm telling you, like what helped us the most was like trusting our team and making sure that they communicated with each other. So that brought up a lot of the issues and really helped them innovate so that we could implement all our best practices across the company. But like, as you said, we have students that come from remote parts of West Bengal and Bihar and Jharkhand. And they're so used to like they were going to be on campus, they were going to have access to Wi-Fi. And suddenly when you have to work from home, or sorry, study from home in this case, it's very different because you don't know if someone is going to be in an area that has the internet to support, the kind of Zoom calls that people were doing. Because, we take it for granted, but, that's not necessarily the case. Devices, we all think that laptops are a given, but not everyone has that. Some of them are doing it off their smartphones, so things like that. So we really had to like make sure we worked with people and heard from the students, and so that we could adopt to the low data model that they would need. So that was one issue, for instance. The other thing was some students were concerned because they weren't suddenly like gonna be on campus, they weren't gonna be getting those in-person classes, so they were like, is a three-year degree even worth it at that point? So we had to really make sure that they had those resources. We built more studios across our campuses, so that we could have access to that. And as Sachin said, it really for me it was really interesting because we could suddenly like now have people be involved from across the country or globe. And for a lot of our team members also, they hadn't done that initially, and whenever we did, there was some resistance, I would say. But because of this whole thing, we could suddenly like the playing field was leveled, and we could really get people from different parts of the country. So it's been interesting. It's a mixed bag, it's a challenge every day, but we've been pivoting, and the team has been pivoting. Students have been very, very helpful. The feedback has been fantastic, and so it's been good overall.
Excellent, Anmol. So I think, Rakhi, do we have a minute? I mean, or do we close now?
It maybe just about a minute.
Okay, so if I have a minute, I want to leverage this time. I will ask three of you. We see you as role models for new age leaders. We were, of course, you were good leaders. Tell us, each one of you, Sanjoy, Anmol, Sachin, tell us 3 characteristics or 3 attributes of good leaders in these times. And you can repeat also, not a problem. Sanjoy.
See, the first one should be like, very open mind, should be able to accept, the failure. The second one is, of course, like thinking, what we heard, like, the think and think, bhava, bhava, bhava,
Right.
like the famous, director said. So that's thinking power is very important. And the third one is, of course, like, as work as a team, that, he said already, Sachin, like, very important, like, as a leader should be able to work with a team. So without, there is nowhere.
Sachin?
Yeah,
I know not, I know not who would make a more fitting guide in these turbulent times than Swami Vivekananda on leadership. Okay. His words were, if you want to be a leader, you be servant of servants. And later on, Robert K. Greenleaf termed this philosophy as servant leadership in 1977. Okay, and then to carry it forward, Herb Kelleher, okay, of Southwest Airlines, said that treat your employees well, and they in turn will treat your customers well.
Absolutely.
And so there, basically, you have to be more focused on giving than receiving, more persuading than coercing, more motivating than in commanding.
Excellent stuff. Anmol.
And I think I would say like implementation. So like what works for your organization within a crisis. The second thing would be timing. Ensure that you're dealing with the problems right then and there rather than, delaying it. And the third thing would be thinking beyond the crisis, which is very important, which people almost forget because they're like, horse eyes, and they forget the time beyond the crisis. So just looking beyond that as well.
Excellent, guys. I'm sure audience got some amazing gold dust and thoughts from all three of you. Raki, over to you. It's really been
Thank you
to my panel.
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. It's been a really great session. Thank you so much, Mr. Nirupam Chaudhary, Mr. Sanjoy Chatterjee, Mr. Anmol Singh Narula, and Mr. Sachin Thakkar for joining us today. Thank you so much.